to Healthy Perspectives with Jeremiah, a podcast that brings you current social and cultural issues through a clinical lens. Hello. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time, please stick around, listen. It should be pretty good. If you're returning, well, thanks for returning. We always appreciate your time. We will try to do our best to make sure that it's worth your time. And today I have my brother. We have been working on our Guidos Bros stuff. As a matter of fact, we just got done. We've been actually hanging out for probably a good hour or more already. And we just been, trying to put some stuff together. So, our hope was to try to get it out by about now, but we're a little behind schedule. It's the way that life works. We're both dads and we both have jobs and life and stuff like that. So, but he's here today. So I got my brother, Jason, and we are going to roll into a topic that we actually decided we wanted to talk a little bit about the power of local influence versus like national influence. And we want to take a look at, where is your time best serving you, your family, your friends, your nation. Like, how is it that, how do we decide what to look at? Do we look at the local stuff that impacts us in terms of time, energy, and resources? Do we look at the national stuff that also affects our time, energy, and resources? And so we're just going to really try to dig into that a little bit and see, kind of what it is that we know, but also probably test each other out a little bit. And so I'm going to start off with a question that I have for my brother. Obviously within the framework of you've got limited time, energy, and resources, you've got a family, you've got all these things going on in your world. How do you decide what to pay attention to when it comes to the news and stuff like that?
I look at trends or things that kind of repeat in the different news sources. So if I see a story about, let's say story A, and I see it on one news source, and I see story A on another and another, then I might start focusing on that a little bit just to see where the perspectives are. If I don't see it on at least two or more, then I tend not to worry about it too much, because that's where maybe those news source biases maybe lean, and it's a little less relevant to me. But since most of them focus on the national, I just try to scrape together what I can so that I'm kind of in the know on it, even if I don't fully understand it, or maybe I don't have the time to research it to form an opinion. At least I have some basic knowledge of it. But what I do have is on my news drop down, let's say on my desktop, is I have my county and city news pages also there. So I have my national ones, and then I also have my local ones. So I click on those at least once a week, since they don't update them as much. The national ones are daily, right? And so that's what I kind of look for the trends. But the other ones I look at weekly. So I'll look at the county pages and the city pages and just see, hey, what's going on? What's going on in the farming world, or what's going on in the county with roads and park openings and park closures, or whatever's going on, because that's what's relevant to me. So that's kind of the quick summary.
Okay, that's interesting. There's a couple of things that come out there. One, by following the trends, there's a certain amount of lemming nature to it that you're going to get the highlights that other people want you to get, right? The louder they are, the more it's going to be likely that it comes across your purview. I think that is, unfortunately, just the world that we live in today, where there's a percentage of our time and energy is going to go to what others want us to see. Mm-hmm. But that also leads to a couple of issues. One that I see right off the bat is, what about the really, really important stuff that whoever they are, they don't want you to see? Or people out there, maybe there's some people who want you to see it, but then there's others who purposely block it. Like they try not to put it on their platforms. If it starts to trend, they start to, diminish its value. Like that stuff happens. So blind spots become a big concern for me there. Another area of concern I have is what you just described to a degree is your echo chamber, right? You may have a balanced echo chamber, but it's still an echo chamber of sorts. We can't totally get away from the echo chamber. My audience out there has heard me talk about the echo chamber multiple times. And that's the idea of us just going to hear what we want to hear. And, obviously you put some things in place so that, you've got some national stuff, some local stuff. And the result of that is you're going to hear some of the things that, you may, it's not just because you want to hear it. You're purposely doing a line between the national and the local. But then the thing that it reminds me of more than anything is Grandma PJ. Because I don't know how many times I've heard this story of like, it goes something like, the river is flowing way faster than I'm going to be able to swim. And I'm swimming and I'm trying to catch as much as I can. But way more is going to get by me than I'm going to be able to catch. And that leaves us in that weird predicament because right now there's, from a cultural lens, information is coming faster than ever. Right. The news cycle used to be, there was the weekly news, then there was the daily news. And then, now there's the hourly news, right? The news cycle is getting faster, faster, and faster, which means there's more information and there's computers that help us contain information. So we could store 10 billion articles that we would never have the time to go back and read. And so, when you're looking at it and going, okay, with all of these changes of speed, how are we going to continue to filter and talk about things that are relevant and important? How do we do that?
Well, I guess I don't think there is an answer to that, because the cop-out answer would be to surround yourself or become a member of a community that all has a similar, I guess, viewpoint on something. Maybe I phrased that wrong. More or less, the community interests align in some way, right? So let's say you have school-age children. So you're going to be a member of a community that also has school-age children. And there's going to be relevance to anything that is related to school-age children with regards to activities or sports or education or something like that, right? So that's kind of your community. But the problem with that is whatever community you're a part of, it creates that echo chamber that you said in the same way that your news sources might, right? And so if you're seeking the news that's relevant to you, then you're part of a community that also has the same relevance. Then all you're doing is you're bouncing off of multiple walls, like that old Atari tank game, right? And you're just trying to figure out which way is the perfect angle to get it to where you want to go. So the reason I guess I started with talking about how I'm looking for trends is because I want to see what's relevant to all of them. But at the same time, I'm seeing which news agencies are omitting certain stories that other ones are picking up, because there's also gold in the omission of certain things. And so that's how I get that. So like if I have 4 websites pulled up, so let's say I have my 4 nationals right here. So I have 2 that skew one way and I have 2 that skew the other way, right? And they each skew in different ways. So I can see what's relevant to all of them. And then like the Supreme Court stuff, that was on all of them across the board. So that was a trend where you can say, okay, they all care about it. They all have their own perspectives of certain rulings, right? But then there's other stories where one will have it and one won't have any. So one source will pick up something in Ukraine and another won't talk about Ukraine at all. Is it relevant to find out what's going on in Ukraine, or is the lack of the story in the other one, is that more relevant? Because how does Ukraine affect me? I have to make that decision, right?
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah, that's
that's
interesting.
So that's how I do it. It takes work because you have to find out these people are telling you a story. Then you have to actively go and see, okay, what's going on that they're not telling you. And you have to go outside the media to get that information.
Yeah.
And that becomes more challenging and takes more resource of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you brought up the Supreme Court stuff, and I'm not going to venture into any particular topic. I just recently did a podcast on one of the issues. But I do want to highlight something. We are hearing about maybe 3 or 4 of the Supreme Court decisions. And I think there was like 40 or something like that. Like there was a whole bunch. But the media doesn't grab onto all of them. How many people in this country, how many people listening to our podcast right now don't realize that there was well over 20 decisions made? How many people think that there really only was like 4 or 5 decisions made by the Supreme Court in the last year?
If you were to poll 1,000 people from 10 of our largest cities, I would say that less than this many in each city would know.
Yeah, that freaking boggles my mind because that's all public record. That's all, like we could all get in there. I'll pull it up real quick. And for those of you who don't know, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, I have to do it this way. 13. You're all going to listen to me count. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And I'm about halfway through. So 27, and I'm pretty close to the halfway point, right? Like I just literally just counted to 27 in a podcast. How awesome is that? Let's just say that for a second.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
3
my
cubed
math skills
just for fun.
Yep, 3 cubed just for you. But here's the thing: like we don't hear about those, right? So what you're saying, I think, is actually a really valid and important point that I want to hit home. We got to look for what's not being said, because if there's 40 some issues that go to the Supreme Court, we're talking about some of the most challenging legal issues in the nation for that year, the most difficult decisions to make. That's why they get to the Supreme Court. Most issues get filtered out long before that. Should we not know what those are?
Okay. Yes and no. So here's my answer to that particular question, which probably isn't an answer, but it's going to work for now. And that is, yes, we should know that there are others and be aware that some of those do impact certain areas or sectors, geographical locations, or businesses, or whatever it is. We should know that. But should we get into the weeds on all of them? No, because each ruling is 100 to 400 pages long. And how many people have time to read that when they can't even read a full article, get past the headline? So this is where my answer to this is it's about your active involvement, not your passive involvement with regards to what you're being shown.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's where I say, okay, yes, we should know of those court cases. We should know everything about all of them. We should know that they exist, and we should have a cursory knowledge of maybe what they surrounded.
So this is the beauty, man. They give us a damn summary. It's
Correct.
literally like chapter. Like, it takes 30 seconds to read the summary of the case. I would think we should at least know that there's more than 5 things that were just debated, right? We should at least know that. And I think maybe I hope and pray I'm wrong, but I'm with you. I think out of 1,000 people, maybe 5 would realize there was more than 5 or 10 cases, right? Well, that right there is a problem for me. Because when I think about like as a counselor, one of the things that I do is, I'm uncovering blind spots for people, not really for people. I'm helping them look around in the space that they're in and go, wow, I didn't look at it like that. So they see it for themselves, but oftentimes I have to point to it. Well, there are some things we shouldn't have to point to, like the Supreme Court does a lot of cases every year, not just 5. That should be common knowledge as a citizen, as somebody within the culture, but it's not. It's just not. So like that is a problem for me. Now, I love your point that, look, you got to filter through and say, is this pertinent in my world? Is this pertinent in my world? Is this pertinent? Because some people are going to take up issues that have really, in my world, no impact. But to be uninformed is problematic, right? To have no idea, like that may be the worst scenario, because it makes people more susceptible. I'll tell you, I'll put it like this. I'll put it in clinical terms. If I have somebody who routinely ends up being a victim, like over and over, like way more than is normal, whether that be something like somebody was raped 14 times, I'm asking myself some questions. I start with number one is, do they know what it means to be raped? Not because I'm saying they weren't, but because I have to ask that question of like, maybe they're using the term differently. So when I say, so then I'll say something like, okay, when you use this word, I know what I think that means, but I want to understand what rape means to you. Right. And, and then they clarify that. And I go, okay, well, they know what that means. And then I go, okay, so if that's the problem, if that's not the problem, then why would they have so much more than is ordinary? Like one should be more than is ordinary. We happen to know it's like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 women, at this point, encounter some kind of a rape or molestation. And for men, it's actually like 1 in 8, 1 in 9, which is, a lot of people don't realize that it's that high for men, but it is. And so what we have is a situation where, all right. So let me tell you a little bit what happened just a second ago. We had an intruder into our podcast time. So for those of you who noticed that there was a weird gap right there, hey, we apologize. And we're going to try to pick up, but let's be real. For those of you who don't know, I did a little editing, and where we are now is we're in a totally different place at the moment. So we're going to try to pick up from where we left off, but chances are you're going to notice a little jump. I know we were talking about, looking at, the reality that people need to look for what is not being said also, but we don't want to get stuck putting all of our time, energy, and resources into something that we have no influence in. And so it does bring up another question I have for you. How do we manage that while also making sure we don't segregate, I'm using that word on purpose, based on interest? Like in the past, we looked at segregation based on color of skin or segregation based on economic status. How do we look at these issues without segregating based on interest, so that we have well-rounded, like knowledgeable people? We don't get pigeonholed into 1 or 2 things and be unable to talk intelligently about anything outside of that 1 or 2 little bubbles.
I don't know if I have an answer to this because that's really hard to do, because we are good at certain things and we have a natural affinity to care about certain things that are in our daily world, I guess. But I guess it would be, if I tried to answer it, it would be, you got to have people around you that challenge you, people that push you and question some of your things, right? Because if they're not going to challenge you, then all they're going to do is reaffirm your thoughts on certain things over and over again, right?
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about purposely adding friction.
You have to, because yes, you have to
Okay.
have that.
So that's good. I agree. And from a clinical lens, the way that plays out, I tell
Mhm.
people on day one when they come and see me, I just saw a brand new client this morning, and one of the things I said to him, I said, "Hey, look, here's the deal. My role in your world is not to make you comfortable. Matter of fact, oftentimes my role is to actually make you uncomfortable, not to harm you, not to hurt you, but to
Mhm.
make you uncomfortable. What that does is it creates opportunity for you to decide new things, to make new steps,
Right.
to take things that are new coming at you and make what we call progress. That's
Correct.
why we do that.
What was
Does
it
that
that
make sense?
Coach Bailey always told us? Do you remember?
He told us a lot of things, man. Slow is fast. But I
Well,
mean,
that's the Marines too, but
yeah, that's it.
it out of adversity comes greatness.
Yeah, right.
And it's that friction that you need. You need that struggle. You need to you need to bat 200 for a week in order to figure out how to bat 400 for a week, because you got to figure out what are you doing wrong while you're batting 200 that'll allow you to bat 400. You got it. So you have to have that struggle and that fight.
Yeah, that's the learning part of the process.
Correct.
Yeah, but now, like, what do we gotta do? And like, I mean, this is the big question for me.
Mhm.
What do we have to do to get to encourage people to actually embrace the right struggles? Because obviously, we don't want to struggle just for the hell of struggling. Like, you don't, like, that's dumb, right? But to embrace the right struggles, the ones that are going to grow us, we right now, I mean, I feel like it many times, I see it in my practice. Many times people are afraid of the struggle. They're working so hard for comfort that they're literally just avoiding something that makes them uncomfortable, to turn around and avoid the next thing that makes them uncomfortable, to avoid the next thing. And that really truly is harmful. Like that is harming them.
Mhm.
So how do we help and encourage people, my audience, to embrace the struggle when it comes to processing this stuff that's coming out at us so fast?
Yeah, I don't know, because you don't want to seek conflict even though you need it
Mhm.
in certain ways, because you don't want it to become over emotional where you start breaking families apart and relationships that you have that are important to you. Um, but you also you need them to lovingly ask you why, ask you to explain your thoughts on certain things, right? And you need that. The reason I use the term lovingly is intentional, because it can't come with judgment, because they could be right and wrong at the same time, because they don't have all the knowledge. They can only tell you what they think based on the knowledge they have. And so then you're not trying to guide them in a way. You're trying to help them guide themselves, right?
Yeah.
You're the
Yep.
lighthouse saying, I'm a rock and I'm here. Don't come this way, but figure out where you need to go, but this is bad, right? This is land. And so watch out, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but find your own way. I'm not telling you where to go. I'm not telling you you must think this, but tell me why it is you think that. And then let's talk. Like, it just seems like if people would just stop judging, open up, listen, and then you could really figure out what's relevant to you, going back to how we started the conversation. And you will avoid those rabbit holes that pigeonhole you. There's two animal references, but those rabbit holes that pigeonhole you into a very constrained, narrow path of thought that you can't escape from, because you're like the Colorado River digging a trench that all you do is you look around and you're like, well, I guess the whole world is this wall. You're like, no, this is just one canyon in a huge world that you need to explore, but you don't have the time for, but you need to get out of that thing. At least see that there's other things out there that are relevant. And so you can't be hyper national. You can't be hyper local. You have to have a flavor of both. And you have to have the people in your life that push you to, I don't say verify, but push you to justify why it is you think that, but then not judge you and say, okay, cool. This is what I think. Let's look together. Let's figure this out together. There's an answer for us. We just don't know what it is yet.
So it's funny. That was a good wrap. We're going to wrap up here in just a second, but I don't know if you're familiar with this. You know who Carl Rogers is?
Nope.
He's a psychology guy. So it's the theoretical approach, which I chose for my dissertation when I was in grad school. There's three titles for it. It all means the same thing, but it's Rogerian therapy. There's person-centered or client-centered. It all means the same thing. But he identified three components that are essential for growth and development in terms of clinical work. One is the relationship, because we were designed and are designed to be in relationship. So we have to have people there that challenge us, but also love us and care about us. All right. So the relationship. Two is unconditional positive regard, which means don't judge. Like, okay. I don't use my judgment scale to judge you. What I use to judge you is your judgment scale. What that means is I take into consideration your past. So what you've told me about your past, your present, and your hopes and fears for tomorrow, all into account when I think about whatever it is that you're sharing with me. Mm-hmm. So if you tell me, I yelled at my kid the other day and I feel really, really bad. And I go, well, let's think about this. In the past, you've done worse than just yell at your kids. You spanked your kid and you felt pretty bad about doing that. Not because it was illegal, but just because you didn't want to be that guy, that dad or something, right? And so, the fact that you yelled at them probably reminds you of that. And what you wanted to move to, you've told me, is you wanted to be better tomorrow than you were today. Well, you feel like this is a step back. I'm using your scale, not mine. Right. On my side, I could be like, you're an idiot. You shouldn't be doing that and all that stuff in my own head, but it doesn't matter. My internal judgment scale is irrelevant when it comes to your life, because I don't have to live your life. So that would be unconditional positive regard. I'm just going to take you as you are and as you want to be with your linear life pathway. And then the third component is empathy, which Carl Rogers was smart in a lot of ways. He's smart beyond what we even maybe realized early on. He's always been pretty well respected in the profession. But empathy is a therapeutic term for love. That's what it is. It's attempting to see the world as if you're somebody else, but without taking on their baggage as if it's your own. So that's the separation between you and me, but with the attempt to see your past, your present, your future through that lens. I know I'm kind of nerding out here, but he did say two other things that were really important. He said, you're more believable when you are congruent than when you are incongruent. So we should always be working toward congruence. And in the clinical world, very much like in the math world, I'm sure your mind went right to congruent. It just means in line. When we say one thing and we live it out, we then are more believable. So like I could tell you, like right here, I could say, I'm an a-hole. And you're going to believe me more about everything that I tell you if it pans out that I actually am an a-hole.
Mm-hmm.
Than if I say I'm a nice guy and I routinely am an a-hole, because that would be incongruent. You would believe me less about all the things that I say.
Right.
So what you're describing there, it easily lines up to, like, we need to do that when we're researching too, when we're looking at these cultural feeds coming our way. We need to not judge, but assess mm-hmm. based on the scale that's put in front of us. That's why anybody who doesn't take a look at what the messenger wants to say is mm-hmm. probably an idiot. Right.
You
know, as my normal, my 16 weeks of You're the Problem would say is you're the problem. If you can't tell that there is an agenda there, what you're doing is you're missing the slant. You're not empathizing. You're looking for an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. That's how we would end up in a segregation of interests, which is what we're doing right now in our culture. And it's really sad. So, all right, there was a whole lot at the end. I didn't expect it to be so much. For those of you who stuck around, thank you so much. Hey, we apologize for the little glitch in the middle. If you noticed it, which I'm sure you did, because I announced it. Why? Because we're not about perfection here at Healthy Perspectives. We're about growth. We're about getting better. We're about gaining perspective and improvement. So if you saw that, if you witnessed that, hey, thanks for your patience and sticking with us. Hopefully this was a good use of your time, and come back and join us. Like, subscribe, do all those things. We appreciate you very much. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Take a look at the details of our podcast for links to our website and other helpful information.